all the people have talked to me about this conference and how exciting it was and what great content there was, and everybody asked me about one panel more than any other. Do you know what that was? No, it's actually the robot surgery one at the end of the day.
Okay, fair enough. Very important.
People are super excited about that. It's really weird. Are the robots going to be operating on us or not? The second one was sleep.
Okay, we'll take it.
So I want you to do that thing you did when we talked last week, where I ask you what sleep affects and why how it impacts our health, and then you just go running.
Sounds good. So first of all, thank you all for having me. It is a pleasure to be here. As far as sleep is concerned, it really affects everything. To be completely literate, we're sleeping about a third of our lives, and we take all our organs with us, including organs that have been operated on with those robotic surgeries. And our development, as we age, it's all kind of conditioned towards how we sleep in part. And everything from our health span to our lifespan to our mood to our quality of life, everything is implicated with regards to the quality of your sleep. Without sleep, you're going to end up having a complete destruction of all those processes.
So list the pathologies. I guess I'm not a doctor, but list the systems that are affected and what bad sleep can do to you.
So a little bit of everything. First of all, hormone regulation. A lot of our hormones are secreted, and depending on how much of those hormones are secreted, also in part varies on how we sleep. Immune system. People are more likely to get sick without good sleep. This has been shown time and time again. When it comes to metabolism, people who have different diet actually gets impacted directly with sleep. Psychiatric issues are directly affected with sleep. I would argue everything, pretty much everything we have.
So I snore.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how many times I've been accused of having sleep apnea.
Yes.
But I feel like everybody is accused of having sleep apnea. Are we diagnosing it more? Is it a chronic problem that everybody faces? Like, let's just explain what it is and what the risks are.
Yeah, so sleep apnea, unfortunately, can affect a vast number of human beings, particularly, as the American diet has continued to change, as modernization, we start seeing that we start getting a little bit larger BMIs. You obviously are very fit, but rates of sleep apnea have been increasing, and also they also occur among very thin people as well, so it's not always related to weight. One of the things I do want to bring up, and I apologize, I'm going to jump off topic. When it comes to sleep, I think there is this big fallacy that people believe that when you go to sleep, you turn off, right? The brain shuts off, and it's like turning off a computer, and the next day you kind of wake up. It could not be further from the truth. When we look at people's sleep, I do sleep studies, and I look at people's brain activity on EEGs. Their brains light up like a firecracker. And this is very important to understand because much like eating, drinking, exercising, sleep is an active process. I think of it as kind of like you have the day shift. The brain still has components for the day shift, and then the night shift crew comes in. If you don't have the night shift crew working, the day shift crew is going to be off schedule and imbalanced. So that's kind of an important thing to illustrate.
Yeah, the challenge being it's an unconscious process. So everything that's happening during that time, you're not consciously aware of, you don't remember, and therefore, unless you're wearing
literally
one of the new trackers, you don't even have any kind of record of what happened. You just know whether you felt good or bad the next day.
Yeah, that's true. Although there are a lot of subtle things that you can pick up.
Like what?
I'll give you an example. The majority of my referrals, so sleep medicine has grown substantially at my hospital, but nationally. I get referrals from everybody from neurologists. I would say about a quarter of my referrals come from neurologists. So patients often come to their primary care doctor and say, you know what, my memory is kind of getting a little bit worse. My cognition is getting a little bit worse. The neurologists go ahead and they do some additional testing, and very often they'll send their patients to me. Because if their sleep isn't regulated, then they're their ability to be able to have normal cognition, memory gets impacted. So cognition is directly impacted by sleep. About maybe a third of my patients to a quarter come from cardiology. So often I'll have some patients that come in that are on 3 different blood pressure medications, and they may have AFib, which is basically an irregular heartbeat. That can lead to strokes, early death. It's directly affecting longevity. We need to get their sleep under control, particularly sleep apnea, but there are so many other factors involved in sleep, not just the amount of hours you sleep or sleep apnea. There's also the quality of your sleep.
So talk about, getting enough sleep and what people have, and walk us through that part where you said, losing an hour of sleep every night leads to some pretty unpleasant outcomes.
Yeah, so that's an unfortunate dilemma. I think you hit the nail on the head early. You said, we don't really know if we don't have enough sleep. Studies have actually sometimes backed that up in some cases. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine typically shoots for 7 hours or more of sleep. There are variations among certain individuals, but if you are getting less than that, or you have fragmented impaired sleep, let's say you have a lot of nighttime awakenings or other issues, don't get those total of 7 hours, that leads to sleep debt. So if you don't sleep for a full 6, 7, 8 hours on a regular basis, that drop in sleep is cumulative, meaning that if, let's say you sleep 6 hours each night for a week, well, you just lost 7 hours of total sleep during that week, and you actually can be significantly impacted. Just a couple of hours a week could lead to basically the same driving performance as a drunk driver.
And this is because of microsleeps.
Yes, we brought up the microsleeps. But anyways, if you want the exact figure, if you were to do this acutely, meaning in one night, if you sleep 4 hours, that's equivalent to a 0.08. And what makes it even more dangerous than microsleeps is the fact that more dangerous than even drunk driving, I would argue, although drunk driving is very important, is the fact that you do these microsleeps. So basically, when you are behind the wheel, somebody who is impaired with alcohol will have a slowed reaction time. But somebody who has sleep deprivation is going to fall asleep. And I'm not talking somebody who falls asleep behind the wheel for 10 minutes while they're driving. I'm talking somebody who falls asleep for 1 to 2 seconds. And you won't even realize it. Your eyes will kind of close 1 to 2 seconds. But guess what? If you're driving 60 miles an hour, those 1 to 2 seconds will lead to a fatal car accident. It could lead to a debilitating car accident. Statistics actually show that there are more car accidents from fatigue-related drivers than there are alcohol and drugs combined. And yet we don't really have a whole lot of money going into fatigue-related driving. It's, when you're talking about longevity, quite literally, that is the fastest way to go.
It's funny, there's that statistic when we do daylight savings time and we lose an hour, or different time zones lose an hour, and then they'll do analysis and they'll say, well, actually, there were more highway fatalities the next day, and they can trace it back years. And it always seems like that doesn't make any sense. Like, people are only losing 1 hour of sleep. Why would that affect their driving? But it's probably affecting the people who have already lost a couple of hours earlier in the week and then hit that tipping point.
I would agree, and that's that cumulative component that we talked about. Studies have also shown that people don't recognize, once they get used to sleep deprivation, chronic sleep deprivation, they actually tend to plateau and they tend to say, okay, well, I'm actually functioning at my baseline. But with continued cumulative decreases, their performance continues to drop. They just don't know it. And that's pretty scary, particularly if you're behind the wheel.
So how can people determine whether they're getting enough sleep?
Well, number one, you really want to pay attention to that. I think a beautiful thing is that for the first time, there is an absolute explosion of patients coming in. There's a recognition of sleep being a quintessential pillar of longevity and health span. With that recognition, now primary care doctors, cardiologists, I'm not kidding you, I get referrals from ophthalmologists for sleep studies and sleep evaluations. It's something that you need to pay attention to. Are you chronically sleep deprived? Meaning, are you not getting enough hours of sleep? I typically push for about 7 at least. Are you feeling tired or drowsy during the day? Again, I talked about some of these subtle things like cognition, blood pressure, Something as simple as glaucoma, for example. Like as I mentioned, in eye doctors, they send me their patients because of continued glaucoma. There's a lot of different things that can be seen with this disorders of sleep.
And so you get these referrals, they come in, do you just take their money and say, okay, you got to get 7 hours of sleep and send them home?
No, absolutely not. I pick apart everything about their sleep. I pick apart what time they're going to sleep, how many times are they waking up. I want to actually, the best visits come from when I can ask their bed partners and spouses. I love interviewing bed partners because they can tell me exactly what's going on when they're asleep. There are a lot of disorders, about 80-something that we have in sleep medicine. And there's some really challenging, interesting ones that are kind of pretty obvious when you see them. Patients will come seek me out, but then there are other ones that are just not as obvious and more subtle.
Yeah, I imagine because it's an unconscious process, that the partner who's there for part of it and living through it has got to be a tremendous resource.
Huge. This may be a little far-fetched, but I do give an example. At Mass General Brigham, we do see some pretty complex disorders, but I remember a patient who was dreaming that he was being attacked by a wild animal. This gentleman, he was just saying, I was really scared. I was fighting this wild animal. And when he woke up, he realized that was his wife. He was actually physically attacking his wife when he was asleep. Now, this person had no recollection of this actually happening, had no cognition behind it. And that's a disorder called REM behavior disorder. So I did a sleep study on this gentleman, and I found out that, that link, the brain, when it's asleep, when you're dreaming, it paralyzes you on purpose to prevent you from hurting yourself or others. When that neurological connection is severed, patients start acting out their dreams. Now, in this particular patient, when we start seeing these kind of behaviors, we start getting concerned that they're going to develop neurologic disease in about 5-10 years. We can predict, this patient may need to be evaluated for Parkinson's. And so there is a lot of stuff related to sleep, and you can see a lot of different effects in other neurologic and other organ systems.
What do you think of this latest generation of sleep trackers, the Apple Watches, the Auras? I'm sure you've got lots of patients coming in and saying what they read and what they understand. How accurate are they? How useful are they? How do you recommend people use these tools?
Okay, so that's a good question.
It's probably like 3 of them.
One of my colleagues, he's awesome, very smart, incredible researcher with our team. He calls them toys. That being said, I tend to feel that they are a little bit more than that. Studies have shown that those trackers are effective at being able to guess how much sleep you're getting, which is great. We want that. They have some limitations when it comes to checking to see which stage of sleep you're in. There are some miscalculations. It's hard to tell from a finger or a wrist exactly what's going on in the brain. And for that, we do sleep studies where I can actually look at EEGs and interpret that on a clinical level. That being said, they're very good at guessing, and there's a few benefits from these trackers. First, there is something called the Hawthorne effect, which basically means that if you know that you are being monitored, you're more likely to improve that behavior or modify the behavior. So, patients come to me and say, I have the sleep tracker. I'm noticing I've only been dedicating 6 hours to sleep. And, we say, well, we need to dedicate more time to the bedroom, right? So let's increase it to 7. Give yourself 7 to 8 hours of an opportunity to sleep. That, in effect, has changed their behavior, which has improved their sleep. However, there are other problems where they come in and they become overly fixated. So I was interviewed with Time magazine a couple of weeks back. We wrote an article on this. It's just a concept known as orthosomnia, which basically refers to an over-fixation on getting perfect sleep scores. And paradoxically, that can actually lead to worse sleep. So I believe that those wearables are excellent. I have one myself. They just have to be used appropriately.
All right, David, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It was great stuff.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.